All right, buddy. Well, so I'm Dylan Johnson, obviously. I don't know. Some people are going to know me, some aren't. Who are you?
So I'm Buddy Hance, and I currently serve as the Calvert County Commissioner at large. And my family's been in Calvert County for a long time. Spent my whole life here, a little further down the river than where we are today. But Calvert County is a very special place for me and my family. So
Good deal. So let's get a little bit of that background. What have you done job-wise? What led you to be a county commissioner and get involved in that manner?
so I've farmed my whole life. I'm the fourth generation on our farm to farm, but I've always been a little active in organizations and politics from afar. And so really my grounding was in Maryland Farm Bureau, and I got real active in political stuff and legislation through Maryland Farm Bureau, and ended up being state president of Maryland Farm Bureau, and learned a lot from a lot of people through that organization and all the 30 some years I spent with them. And then when I left Maryland Farm Bureau, I became Secretary of Ag for Maryland under Governor O'Malley. Served 8 years there and learned a lot about the inner workings of Annapolis and legislature and state government and how government operates. So when that was over, came home back to the farm and started paying a little more attention to what was going on locally, and didn't like some of the decisions that were being made. So I was always told, if you don't like something, and get involved and change it. So I ran and was lucky enough to win, and now I'm finishing out my second term and running for a third. And it's about making sure that we try to maintain the character of Calvert County. A lot of people moved here; they understand what a great place this is, and that takes work and effort. It just doesn't happen. So that's why I got involved.
Good, good. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Calvert is, I was also born and raised here. A little bit after you were born and raised, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, Calvert has a character about it. It's very much so one of the few places left on the eastern seaboard, I would say, that is still, small town USA feel to it. And kind of the same person that told you, if you don't like something, get involved. That's what led me to be here today, right? Um, so I want to do this stuff, and I'm going to be talking to other commissioners, other candidates. Hopefully, I'm reaching out to them. We're going to see who wants to do it and who don't. You happen to be the first, so we're going to talk about some of the stuff going on in the county now. Kind of, get some background. I want to, also ask you some questions that I think, the public does want to know. I also think there's a silent majority in this county that, much like myself, we go to work every day. We come
Mm-hmm.
home. We
Yep.
we go with our kids. We play baseball. We do football, soccer, all of
Right.
that stuff. And it's a lot to try and keep up with politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only in the national scale, the state scale, but even here in Calvert County. And I don't think we've seen anything quite like what we're seeing today as far as county government goes. At least in my time, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say that. But let's go over a little bit of the background here. So, I've heard this before, and growing up here, it's the reason my parents came here before I was born, which is, when the nuclear power plant came to Calvert County, I'm sure there was a lot of pushback. I wasn't born there. I don't know that for sure, but I'm sure there was some pushback. That's a huge deal. But what happened after that nuke plant, to my understanding, is that was a jump start,
Mm-hmm.
money wise,
Mm-hmm.
to basically get us to, one of the top school systems in
Mm-hmm.
the state. One of the top, places for people to move, safe. I mean, we just won the safest county in
We did.
Maryland. Shout out to Sheriff Cox for that. But all of that kind of stemmed, it seemed, from that.
It did.
You were here before the nuke
Yeah.
plant.
Yep.
So give me that perspective, and we'll just kind of build up from there. What was Calvert County like before the nuclear power plant?
So I was born in 1955. Route 4 through Calvert County was a two-lane road. It was not dualized. There was no bridge in Solomons. Nobody went to Solomons unless you wanted to go fishing. There was nothing there. And back when I was growing up, there were probably about 15,000 people in Calvert County, which is not very many. So it was a very close-knit community, but we were very poor. It was mostly farmers and watermen and not a lot of economic development going on in the county. And so I was too young to understand what went on when they built the nuke plant, as far as, people
Yeah, the ins and
concerned
outs.
about
Right.
it.
Right.
I talked to some people that were around at that time and, paid attention. They said at that time they were kind of glad to see some revenue come, talking about tax revenue. And uh, and county wasn't built up very much. So it was still pretty rural. So it was just going to be tucked in there and nobody was really going to know it was there. Um, but it does seem kind of strange because, I'm in school at that time and we're doing these nuclear drills because it was the Cold War going on and Russia's going to drop a nuclear bomb on us. We're trained to go under a desk and cover our heads like that's going to save us.
Right.
And then we built a nuclear power plant right here in the middle of us. So
I can imagine the pushback that
Yeah.
those people probably got.
there was some pushback,
Yes.
but we didn't have social media then. People
Right.
couldn't communicate the way they do now. So it was a different time.
Well, the
But
communication is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, now we just have a camera, so
Yeah.
I can share this with
Right.
the rest of the
Yeah.
residents. But back then it was exactly what we're doing now, and that also, we'll get to that later. But I think a lot of what we're seeing today on social media and stuff like that, had it been around during that time, I think we'd be seeing a lot of the same. And I think nowadays we're missing this human element, this conversation. Let's talk about it. We're both from this county. We both live here, but we've had different lives. So, how did we get to this point? But nothing's saying whether I agree or disagree with you if we can't find common ground. That's what human beings are meant to do.
That's right. But that nuclear power plant changed Calvert County forever.
Yep.
So the first check that the county got was larger than the entire county budget. And as you mentioned, they spent that money very wisely. They reduced taxes and they put money in the school system. And we went from the worst school system, in 20 years to the best.
Yeah.
And the reason a lot of people have moved here in the last 30 or 40 years is because of the school system and being a safe county. So that nuke plant really triggered a change in this county that, everybody says, they don't want to see any change, but, you really can't not see change. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not changing, you're getting left behind to a certain degree. Nowadays, it's far more escalated, in my opinion, right? Just because stuff happens so fast.
Yeah.
Technology's here, buildings go up real quick.
Then they built the bridge in Solomons. They opened that 4 years after the nuke plant started up. So that changed Calvert because now, people could drive through Calvert to get to St. Mary's.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people all the time when the BRAC realignments happened, where they closed some bases in other parts of the country and consolidated, a lot of them came to the naval base here in Lexington Park. And the people with children moved to Calvert because we had better schools than St. Mary's, still do today. And they could commute across that bridge to work. So it worked out great for them.
And I'm sure there's hundreds of them nowadays to this day that do that. And especially with that base there, being previous military, I can understand you're looking into the area that you're being told to move to, and you're trying to find the best situation. And Calvert County has always been the better option out of the surrounding counties for a lot of people. Maybe not for some, but for a lot of people, they do come here.
Yeah, they do.
So let's just segue from the nuke plant. That is very similar to the history that I read about with the nuclear power plant. And like you said, sometimes change is good, sometimes change is bad, right? I think we're sitting at a point now where, I'd like to get into the budget because that seems to be a super overlooked aspect of everything we're dealing with now. You've seen me out at all these public meetings and stuff like that. I've seen all of the commissioners out and about. I'm trying to talk to people, not necessarily people just my age or just, my leanings one way or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to get everyone's aspect. But as far as the budget goes, okay, I'm not a financial major. Okay, I didn't go to college and learn about accounting, finances, any of that. You know, I was also much like you guys were growing up. Like I was not from a rich family. I'm not, to this day. I'm still not rich.
Right.
I mean, we're all trying.
We're all working every day.
We're trying. But just I learned a lot what I know about money and stuff like that through trial and error. But as far as like a county government, a state government budget, all of that good stuff, I've been trying to really dive into that because that is a factor. The reason I asked you about the nuke plant, that was a huge spike in revenue, like you said. And that revenue, thankfully, was spent, pretty good, right? I mean, we can all Monday morning quarterback anything and pick it apart, but in the grand scheme, to take a school system that was not so good, one of the worst, and make it the best, tells me we invested in some stuff that did matter and changed the shape of Calvert. As far as the budget goes now, I've been watching the meetings. You guys have presented stuff as a board. You guys have actually reached out now, to my understanding, and we have people in the county that are employees that actually look into that stuff and really break it down. And we just got a AAA rating not too long ago. I know everyone wants to talk about this AAA rating, and some of the other commissioners have spoke on that. And I think you spoke on that actually during the meeting. So just kind of run me through. Let's talk about the budget. What are we looking at as far as, because the whole reason I started this, right, is I plan to be here forever. I don't want to leave. And the price of everything has quadrupled since COVID. Everybody deals with that, including the government. To be honest, right, we're kind of we're a small town. We're a little red dot on any voting map in Maryland, and a blue controlled state. Not for nothing, that does kind of play a part in funding, from what I've seen. You're living it, so give me your aspect on that. What do you think? I know we can't predict this stuff. We're not. I'm not watching stock markets. I don't know how to predict. But there is some stuff that we can predict, right? We have to pay for certain stuff to keep Calvert safe, to keep Calvert good in schools. So what do you think that's going to look like, outlook, as far as a lot of the complaints and backlash that I've seen from the current, towards the current board is, no data centers, right? No, no high occupancy housing, stuff like that. They want to keep Calvert, right? And there is some substance to that. And we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But just from the money aspect, and again, I understand there's way more concerns than just money when we're talking about data centers and stuff. But just money concerns going forward, if we weren't to do a data center, if we're not to do any kind of large scale industrial or commercial project that would bring in an influx of tax revenue. So if we're dealing with just what we have now, run me through, roughly what do you think that would look like in the next 4 years?
So the concern is in Calvert, which we've heard from the bond raters ever since I've been there, is that we don't have a diverse enough portfolio.
Right.
Majority of our revenue outside of residential revenue comes from the nuclear power plant and the Cove Point LNG. And they've been concerned about us, our future, without, and people, as you say, they don't want to see any growth. They don't want to see residential. They don't want to see commercial. They don't want to see anything. But the problem with that is when you don't have that is your costs go up and your base doesn't go up. So how do you, they still want good schools. They still want it to be safe. They want good parks. They want all these amenities, and they all cost money. Just like you said, since COVID, everything has quadrupled in cost.
Across the board.
Everything.
That includes government.
And it affects you in your home, and it affects government.
The
I think it
sheriff's
affects
office,
government even more.
yeah, the sheriff's office is not getting much of a discount for
No.
Explorers.
No.
And if you go to any dealership in the county and try and buy, you know, a Ford or a Tahoe, I mean, we can look at the prices. A diesel truck used to be 65,000 or 105,000.
I tell the story. The story I use that most people can equate with is an ambulance.
Yep.
Before COVID, you could buy any ambulance you wanted for about $250,000. Today, they're $650,000, and you got to wait a year and a half to get one.
Yep.
So just in these 6 years, an ambulance has almost quadrupled in price.
That's why I say everything, and it's across the board. So everything's gone up at least threefold, if not 4 or 5
so for
times.
Us, you know, we've been lucky. You know, the nuclear power plant came here in the 60s and boosted the county revenues up. And then we went through a big growth spurt in the 80s and 90s, and the LNG facility ramped up. So that kicked in a bunch of revenue during that time frame. And now we're starting in a pathway where, you know, the funding for the LNG is kind of leveled off or declined a little bit. The nuclear power plant's kind of holding steady. So what do we do in the future to find additional revenue? You know, we don't want to raise taxes. People say cut. Well, when you cut, it affects the programs. Might not affect all the programs that you enjoy, but it's going to hit something that you like and why you're here.
Or even if it's not something I like, it hits something someone else likes.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, right. I get it.
Because we're in campaign season. You know, you hear people say we're going to drain the swamp in Prince Frederick or we're going to doge county government. Well, we're not the federal government.
No.
You know, you start letting people go, that impacts something that affects somebody's life in Calvert County. You know, we're just not that big that you can just wipe out things and it'll still move along.
I agree,
so, you know, cuts sound wonderful. We've been going through some of that. If you people that have paid attention, you know, the last few years, we've tried to restructure county government. We started doing zero-based budgeting, which means every year a department has to come in and fight for their budget from the ground up. They don't, you know, it's not this thing where last year I got $1 million, this year I get 1.5. No, you start from zero every year and you prove this is what you need to you know, accomplish your mission. And the last few years, people also noticed we do a lot of budget amendments. Well, that's because we've got everybody so tightened down that through the year, you know, they may find some funding, they may shift something they want to do. So now they got to come in and readjust their budget because we're not giving them any more money.
Right.
You know, people say, well, you haven't laid anybody off. Well, we sort of have done some things through attrition and reconfigured, you know, just like a private business, government changes. The things you did yesterday, you don't have to do tomorrow. So, you know, you kind of shift around your people and what they're doing. So our biggest increase in staffing has been for ambulance service, EMS.
Right.
Because our volunteers came forward about 5 years ago and said, you know, we just don't have the manpower to cover all the demands for ambulance service in the county. So we had to start career ambulance. And I think we're up to about 80 or 90 employees now. And we're only covering 70%. And I think that budget's a little over $9 million, and that'll continue to grow. So when you look, you talked about looking out, you know, you're thinking about what's coming in the future. So paid fire service, I can't tell you if that's going to be 10 years or 20 years, but that's coming. You know,
I think, you know, anybody looking at it with a realistic perspective would agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, I did volunteer for a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I also feel for the volunteers out there that, you know, it is hard to do something without any pay, right?
Right.
It's hard to kind of go away from your family and, you know, spend this time. I mean, at the end of the day, they are volunteers, you know. I think there's only 2 departments that don't have paid EMS in them, correct?
Right, Huntingtown and St. Leonard's.
Right, and they're kind of in the middle. But, you know, if you drive through Huntingtown or St. Leonard, you know there's only one light.
They're not far off.
They're not far off,
no,
but they're just, thankfully, their communities are a little more spread out. They don't have a lot of the, you know.
They have some good volunteers, but they don't have many left anymore because it's a lot to run an ambulance. Just the training that's required.
Oh, yeah.
Updates to your training.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you live in Solomons and you get on that ambulance for a call, you might as well figure you just gave up 2 hours of your life.
Especially,
minimum.
Yeah, because you got to go to the hospital.
That's right.
You got to restock. You got to clean it. You got to then get it back in service.
Yeah.
And halftime, you know, I've been there myself. You don't even make it back to the station. And I was at St. Leonard, so I'm even closer. We might not even make it to the station, right?
That's right.
Before you get put on another one.
And all these people, you know, have created this demand, so it's the cost. it's the impact of the population growth.
So just circling back just a little bit here with the budget, right? So we know paid EMS, they're going to need more. If I'm not mistaken, you guys had to shut down EMS lieutenant spots. Unfortunately, they didn't make the cut this year. But that's going to have to come, right?
It's going to come. That's right.
So as far as balancing the budget with what we had, you did say, the main thing that the creditors are looking at,
where your next revenue is going to come from.
We're not as diverse
nope.
as they would like.
Nope.
So what do you think we could do in the future as far as diversifying our portfolio, if you will, right? Without necessarily changing the landscape, changing what makes Calvert, right? That's a lot of people's concerns, mine as well, right? I love this county because of the way it looks, the way the people are still,
right.
We could still go to Prince Frederick and have conversations with people, and they don't care who you are, right?
Still a community.
It's still a very tight-knit community. And then you break that down into St. Leonard's, Huntingtown, Solomons, Lusby's. Clearly, even with the backlash, it does give me a little bit of hope that, at least people are a community again. They, you may be the enemy right now, but at least they're talking to each other. And that's good to see, but how do we keep that moving forward, and also keep teachers wanting to come teach in Calvert because we have competitive salaries, right? You don't get good schools without competitive salaries.
That's right. That's right.
Somebody told me a long time ago, if you're good at doing something, don't do it for free, right? So a lot of people want to get paid more money. If you're a good teacher, you're going to come to the people paying you more money. And like I said, the fire service, fire trucks are going to be more expensive. You're looking at
$2.5 million for a ladder truck now.
For a ladder truck and a squad, right? Your special services, if you will.
Boat in Solomons is over $1 million.
It's insane. So how do we keep that stuff? How do we, as a commissioner, how do you balance that budget moving forward without any growth, right? We have to kind of look at that.
So you work really hard on economic development, but it's a challenge. In Calvert County, we're surrounded by water. We don't have
both sides.
We don't have infrastructure. We're off the beaten path, so businesses aren't beating the door down to come to Calvert. So
that's also why we love living here.
That's
too,
exactly right.
So we don't want that. Yeah,
there's a balance.
A lot of people don't want that.
But we've been fortunate. Just looking back, the nuclear power plant came, the LNG plant came. They're small footprints and high revenue.
And also, like you said, the bridge, right?
And the bridge
that brung a lot of people. I've also noticed just in my short time of life here, 30-some years, right? A lot of people are moving out of the surrounding counties and coming here. One for the schools and stuff, but one for just the quieter, they're surrounded by water, right? It's safe, it's quiet.
People, but that all costs money.
Right. And so that's the aspect that I'm trying to get at here. Are we kind of just going to be taxed to death in the future if we don't develop something?
So
not that you can control that.
Right.
I'm looking at it from the perspective of outside in, right? I'm not a commissioner, so I'm not running for any office, none of that. What does it look like for me, as a blue collar worker with a family, with a son, right? What does that look like for me? I can, we're balancing budgets to grocery shop. We're, and I'm not saying we're poor and we're not rich. It's just we're in the middle, right? And I think that's a majority of this county, especially from my age group up into the 50s, 60s, people that aren't retired yet. Like, can everybody afford
got kids in school? You want to make sure the schools
is it going to be is it going to be a giant tax hike? Is it going to be cuts to amenities?
There's
right?
Going to have to be cuts or tax increases if you can't find additional revenue. So people want to say, well, why do you want a data center in Calvert County? Well, because we have to at least investigate every opportunity that comes along.
And it's not so much do you want it?
No,
it's why can't we?
I don't want it.
Why can't we at least entertain it? Is my question. So, like, one of the commissioners did mention, something along the lines of a moratorium. We've all heard that. We've all watched the clips. We've all done that. So, you know, a lot of people have asked me, okay, so, and I'll give my take real quick, and then I definitely want to hear your take. To me, what a moratorium does, it does stop it. Okay. It does say, okay, you're absolutely right. The people that don't want data centers, that don't want anything to do with it, you know, I've heard, well, I don't want to be Waldorf. I've heard, I don't want to be Lexington Park. And, you know, I somewhat agree with that. I don't either. That's why I live here and not there. You know, but in the grand scheme of things, as far as money and budgeting and just the overall future of the county, with a moratorium, it kind of just tells anybody inquiring Constellation for data centers, inquiring the county for, you know, a data center in Lusby, right, on the property that the county owns. A moratorium just tells them, no, we're closed for business. And so then, you know, to me, that leads to exactly what you said. And, you know, I'm not the one saying all this, but I mean, I can also just use common sense, and there's millions of counties in this nation. You could look at that, and see what happens when big business leaves. If you look at, you know, Flint, Michigan. Now, granted, totally different, right? But just
don't have to go that far. Hagerstown.
Hagerstown, yes.
Yeah, Hagerstown or Cumberland.
But, you know, and look at the opioid use and the heroin and all that stuff. We don't want that for our people. We don't. I know I don't. I'm sure you don't either. You wouldn't be a commissioner if you wanted that kind of stuff. A moratorium to me just closes us completely to those companies, which some people will jump up and down and say, yay, that's a great thing. And that's fine. They're allowed, you know, have your opinion. But from a realistic point of view, you know, the people jumping up that want that kind of stuff, maybe they are set, you know, maybe they have you know, a source of income from a previous job. They don't have to worry about it. But from my point of view, I'm 31 years old. You know, what does 30 years from now look like when I don't want to leave here? I want my son to be able to stay here. You know, I want 4 generations in Calvert, you know, that's still appealing to me. So how can you tell me, you know, we don't even want to hear anything? Obviously there's concerns with them.
So,
but a moratorium does shut it down, right?
It does. So as soon as we learned that Constellation was looking at a data center project, and then, you know, we had some interest from a couple individuals talking about Offsite A was a suitable location, you know, we started learning about data centers. Well, you know, you do some research, you find out data centers have been around for 30 or 40 years. They've changed over time. They've gotten bigger. They've also changed the way they
build them,
operate, the way they build them, the way they operate. And depending on what you do in that center affects the impacts. If you mine for Bitcoins, I hear it's a lot louder process than it is if you're just doing storage, data storage. If you're doing AI or if you're doing quantum.
There's one in Virginia. I think it was Virginia or Pennsylvania. So I'm sure somebody watching will check that and let us know for sure. But I'm pretty sure it was Virginia that they had a data center that was mining for Bitcoin. And it's causing a crap ton of backlash right now.
So if you do a moratorium on data centers, what are you investigating? If you don't have an actual project. I mean, that was my position. You know, if you have a moratorium and you don't really have a project, what are you really investigating? Because you investigate them in general, you might get something completely different. So let's wait until we actually get a project, get a permit application. Let's see what they're going to do, and then let's figure out what the impacts are, what the benefits are, and let's mitigate those impacts and see if it can work in Calvert County. Because if you look at those 2 sites, you know, I understand that if you live there, you're going to have some impact. But if you look at those 2 sites from the big picture, they're not near large residential areas. They're fairly wooded and buffered. So if you drive down Route 4, you're probably not even going to see them or know they're there. People are going to scream that there are some neighbors that live next door. There are 20 residences around the outside of Constellation that are going to, certainly their life is going to change if it happens. But from a county perspective, you know, we're investigating this project to see if it can work. Because of the revenue benefit, there's nothing to compare to the revenue benefit because we have personal property tax on businesses.
And
if it weren't for that,
yep,
there's not a big benefit.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I've brought that up to people, you know, that were protesting the Natelli project, and even the Amazon one, and you know, I'm not here supporting anybody. I'm here just talking, right? My whole subjective outlook on the data center situation is, I think you're onto something with the whole. To me, if I don't have a project, what am I investigating, right? Yeah, there's tons of literature out. There's tons of stuff on everything on data centers. Like you said, they've been around 30, 40 some years now.
Yep.
A majority of the newer style construction that we see the most of, about 15 to 20 years, somewhere in that range, right? So even if you're looking at those, you know, that's great. We can look at all that.
People have Googled water usage. They're screaming about how much water they use. Well, the two projects proposed in Calvert County are going to use very little water. They're not going to use any potable water. And Amazon says in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to be waterless. They're not even going to use water for cooling. So the only thing they need water for now is fire suppression and personal use. So,
which would be the bathrooms for employees, stuff like that.
Yeah, if they have kitchens or something. But
well, and also what a lot of people are screaming for the moratorium are trying to get at is, you know, we don't have that research. We don't know this. We don't know that. And I agree with them. We don't, right? Well, that's because we haven't had a project. Nothing's been submitted to the county that I'm aware of. You know, and I watched the planning commission meetings. I've watched the environmental commission, you know, give their outlook. You know, some people saw me speak at that. You know, which kind of led me to where we're at today. 2 minutes, not enough time for me, for this kind of stuff. But
it's a lot when you're sitting there listening, Don.
Oh, I believe it. And the other thing
St.
is,
Mary's County doesn't even do public comment.
Well, I'm proud to be a Calvert County resident. You know, and you know, and Charles County is trying to go to a charter government.
Yeah, they don't do public comment either.
And guess what they're building?
We're the only county left that still does public comment.
Guess what I heard Charles County's building?
What?
At the old plant at the Virginia Bridge.
There's a
data center company coming in, is what I heard.
We don't want to spill all the beans, but there's more than one coming to Charles County.
So, you know, not
one really close to Calvert County.
Not for nothing, you know, Calvert County didn't get a say on Chalk Point either. Right? You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, we can only control this little peninsula that we live in. And, you know, as far as a moratorium, I understand why people want it. Hey, let's hold the brakes a little here, because it seemed like everything showed up so fast. And it did, you know, from all accounts. But you are right? I've kind of looked into some of the HVAC systems. You know, I have friends that do that for a living. I'm not an expert in any of it. But what I do know is I know people that have worked at data centers. I've gone to them myself. You know, my job is backup power, standby generators. Okay. You know, a lady in the environmental commission was talking about tier 4 generators. What I can tell you is the scrutiny on a tier 4 generator is more than a Chevy Silverado. Okay. So if you have a problem with a tier 4 diesel generator, then you have a problem with everything out there. And if you tell me, well, I drive an electric car, then we have a whole different road we can go down for that. But here's the thing, like, there is information out there. People don't want to seek it. No. That's my opinion.
Because we went to Ashburn, Virginia. So Ashburn, Virginia is about the size of Waldorf. It's like 95,000 people. They've got hundreds of data centers. I mean, it's all it is data centers. So we went there that day. It's just
blank commercial buildings.
We get out of the van. Some guy's got a leaf blower there. You know, he's doing landscaping. He turns the leaf blower off. You don't hear anything.
Yeah.
You don't hear anything.
So from what you've learned, is it more, you know, like you said, you guys did go to one. I'm sure you've been doing your research on this. I would hope so. Anyway, that's what we want from you guys.
Exactly.
You know, the noise, it is a concern, and it's, you know, like you said, there's 20 houses, right?
It's older generation data centers, and it depends on what they do. Mining for Bitcoin, I think, is still a noisy operation, which is what they're going to do over at the power plant in Charles County.
Again,
what I hear.
Glad I'm in Calvert County.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, but it, people.
Is that the
people
most?
Don't want to see change. So a
Well,
lot.
there's
that's
that.
Driven by
there's
a lot.
that. Yeah. I think it scares a lot of people.
Yeah, it does.
Honestly, and it scared me at first. That's what led me down this whole road I'm in now.
Right.
I heard data center, and I knew a little bit about them, a little bit more about them than I guess like a general person would that had never seen one. But in general, there was a lot of unanswered questions I had too, and I had never thought about one in my backyard until this was announced. So,
and there's not a lot of jobs, so
it creates jobs during construction.
And there are long-term jobs, but as far as running the building,
the companies,
it's only like 10. But
the
then
companies,
they hire out HVAC, they hire out plumbers, electricians, security, cleaning services, landscaping. They hire all that out. So a campus of 3 or 4 buildings will create 300 or 400 jobs, maybe.
I think if that.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, now I'm not saying that to shoot you down on it.
No.
It's just.
But the benefit is it doesn't create this huge traffic issue.
Yes.
That we're all worried about.
So that's kind of my when I go to these things and I talk to people outside, it has a lot to do with that. They'll say, oh, well, they're going to create jobs and this and that. Well, what does the traffic look like? It's like, well, anytime you're building anything commercial, residential, it doesn't matter. There's going to be
during construction. There's going to be
you're going to have to deal with some traffic.
Yes.
By all means.
But those 2 facilities are both on the main road. They're not on back roads. They already have traffic lights to control traffic. That makes a huge, because people keep talking about the LNG facility. That is completely different. That was a little narrow county road.
Little Cove Point Road.
Yeah,
it literally has little in the road.
Yes. So these 2 projects are both on main roads. You're not going to see the traffic impact like we saw with
you're going to see traffic.
They're
by
not
all
have
means.
To shut the roads down like they did for moving in large equipment.
And they come in early. I've been there, right? Yeah. Blue collar, just like the rest of this county, for the most part. And, we understand, like, they're coming in at 5, 6 in the morning. They're getting started. They're trying to beat the heat. They're getting their stuff done, and they're rolling out by 1, 2 o'clock.
But there is going to be impacts.
There's going to be impacts. There's no getting around that.
Yeah.
But
can we mitigate those? And is it worth the benefit?
That's my standpoint. Let's look at, is it worth it, right?
So we should talk about the benefit before we run out of time.
Yes.
The benefit is, because we collect personal property tax for businesses, for every $1 billion they invest, it'll generate about $40 million for us.
Okay.
But because the technology, the microchips inside there that process the data, they don't last very long. They get outdated really quick. So in year 1,
within years,
100% value. In year 2, they're at 50%, and in year 3, they're at like 35%. So
they kind of depreciate like a vehicle
really quick
when it leaves the lot.
And a boat,
and a boat. Yeah, as soon as you leave the lot, guess what? We're already down.
Exactly.
So,
but they have to replace them every 4 years, and then you go back up. So you have to look at an average. So I think Nutelli in his presentation, he ran some numbers, and he said that his project, each building would generate over a 4-year period an average of $15 million.
Okay.
So for that project, that's $60 million a year in revenue from that one project.
And that's
on 100 acres.
That was the five building
4 buildings.
4 building campus.
4 buildings.
Because Amazon is a separate
Amazon
project.
Is a separate project.
Right. But
so for that
just
4 building project, $60 million a year in revenue to the county.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because that's kind of my job.
No.
Newly elected job, because this is my first one, but I want to continue it. Because people are going to comment, they're going to say that this means nothing if I don't ask anything. And it's my concern too. How do we hold them to that? How can we assure, first of all, let's just lay it all out. If we mitigate environmental impacts to a point that we're all happy, let's just say that.
As best you can.
Most of the county's happy about what we've done to mitigate that.
Right.
We mitigate the water. We mitigate
we take care of water.
Well, to my understanding, there's a text amendment in the zoning that they can't drill an aquifer. That was a lot of people's big problem was, I don't want them pulling.
Nope.
Because we don't live on a very stable aquifer table at all.
No. And we're not going to let them pull cooling water out of there.
No. So let's just say, you know, we find the perfect project. You know, it's all glitter and butterflies now. How do we then, you know, hold them to, okay, you know, because a lot of people are saying, okay, the LNG and the nuke plant, they're not doing it now anymore because of the spike in what everything costs. What our stuff goes up, but they're, you know, what they're giving into the county is not closing that gap.
It's because personal property tax on equipment. So for those industries, you know, while they do updates once in a while, their equipment's depreciating. So their tax is going to go down.
Starts here and it slowly
just
goes
like
down.
the data center, but it's really rapid and it goes like this. The LNG facility, it's just going to keep going.
Just like the nuke plant, to my
understanding. The nuke plant, yeah, same thing. So those revenue streams are going to go down. A data center is more level because they're always upgrading.
So they're not really a straight line. They go up and down, but it ends up averaging. You can kind of predict the average.
For budgeting, what you want to do is you do want to make an agreement with them that levels out the funding.
And that would be a pilot, correct?
It doesn't have to be a pilot. We can do that without a pilot. But the pilot benefits us because then it's not counted as tax revenue to the state. And so the wealth formula for schools doesn't kick in. So
that was my next question. The state ain't doing too hot with their budget.
No. And that'll be a future problem next year.
It's going to be a future problem forever, probably, honestly. But, I mean, so how do we also avoid, okay, cool, we get $60 million a year. Let's just say first year we get $60 million in revenue. What's stopping the state from coming down and saying, hey, let me get a little bit of that?
If you have a pilot, they can't. Because at least right now,
that's what I've heard.
They changed the law. They only can affect tax revenue. And when you have a pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. So you and I, you come to Calvert County, we make a deal called a pilot where you're not paying taxes, but we negotiate, you're going to give me $40 million a year.
And that's straight to the county.
Straight to the county.
That is not a tax revenue that the state can't come and grab.
And mainly it's the wealth formula for the school system. So that's why that year when the pilot expired and we hadn't renewed it, they came in and took $22 million because that money automatically converted to tax revenue. So then they put it in the calculation. And then when we renewed the pilot, it went back down because now it's not tax revenue anymore. So for people that say pilots are important, it is important because they would take that $22 million every year if we didn't have a pilot.
And so with the pilot, we can hold them now accountable, right? So then the next concern is, okay, what does this look like in 20, 30 years? Do we know? Is there anything out there? I've been looking and, you know, like you said, they've been around for 30, 40 years. The more modern ones, like I said previously, you know, about 15 years average ago, they haven't reached that 30-year mark. You know, this is a brand new thing. And I think that's what scares people too.
What we hear is they sign 20-year agreements.
Okay.
And nothing we have is guaranteed. I mean, the nuclear power plant has to get relicensed every so often.
Right.
If they don't relicense, they shut that down. That money's gone. The LNG facility, you know, their contracts, the current contracts they operate on expire in 2035 or 2037, something like that. They don't know what they're going to do once those contracts expire. So nothing's guaranteed. No matter what industry you bring in, people want guarantees. There is no guarantee.
Right.
We talked about Cumberland. Look what happened to Cumberland with all that manufacturing left. It can happen. There's no way to prevent that from happening.
Like I said, you know, it's far away, but it is an example. Flint, Michigan too, though. Like as soon as all the manufacturing vehicle plants shipped overseas, that's what they're left with, right? So
it can happen.
We can't guarantee anything.
And that's why.
But you can sign an agreement for at least 20 years, roughly.
But that's why we have fund balance. That's why the bond raters require us to have such a high level of fund balance, is if one of those facilities were to shut down and that revenue went away, you have a cushion. So at least you have buy some time.
So what would you say to the people that are like, oh, well, we got 120, I think it was last I checked, 122 million just sitting in savings. We can use that. I've heard that in the meetings from commissioners, from people, from candidates. A lot of you didn't say that, but I'm just saying in general, people say, well, why can't we use that? Why can't we buy turf fields? Why can't we do this?
Because You know, the bond raters require it to maintain our AAA bond rating, which I think is very important.
And what
The
is
other thing,
AAA? Just real quick, AAA, to my understanding, correct this if I'm wrong, from my research personally, is it's your
credit score
as a government.
It's a government credit score.
That's okay, exactly right. So that was the metaphor I wanted to use.
Yeah.
Okay, so AAA is what, 850, 800?
Probably 1,000 or 1,200.
So it's like the best you can get.
It's the best, especially when you have all three.
Okay, so explain what happens if I pull $9 million out and build a turf field, or what I forget off the top of my head, but somebody had laid the cost out. Let's say we build a turf field, or we take that $9 million out of savings and we build the park that everybody wants.
Yeah.
What happens to our bond rating then?
So there's 3 rating agencies that we go to. Mm-hmm. Moody's is the most restrictive. Moody's requires a 35% fund balance of your budget.
Okay.
The other 2 only require 17%. So if we dip that fund balance down, we would lose Moody's AAA. We might get a AA. So we'd have 2 AAAs and a AA. My concern is that's a sign. If you lose your bond rating, just like if your credit score, your personal credit score starts going down because of something you do,
it's harder to get loans.
When you go to borrow money, say, wait a minute, or maybe a job looks at your credit score. They're thinking, what's going on with this guy? Now his credit score is starting to dip down. Something's going on. So for me, once you have it, that's why I believe it's important to maintain it, is to make sure that from the outsiders looking in, we're a secure place. And if something were to happen, the LNG shuts down or the nuclear power plant shuts down, we've got a savings that we can fall back on, so that it's not all of a sudden we got to cut $60 million out of the budget.
Right.
It gives us time to prepare. And you were in the fire department, I was in the fire department. Look at all the time we spent preparing for things that never happened.
Training after training.
But if they do, you got to be ready.
Yeah.
And that's what that fund balance says to me. We're ready for bumps in the road.
And also, I mean, this is how I looked at it when I learned how the bond ratings worked, right? Obviously, it's a credit score, right? But also, I looked at something that happened pretty recently. The flooding in the mountains, Tennessee, Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The federal government didn't come save them. FEMA didn't come save them. The Red Cross, I think, did try. They were one of the few, but the states didn't come save them. Why? Well, because they're a small town community. They just happen to be on a mountain. Yeah. We happen to be on a peninsula. But I'm just saying, it only takes one hurricane to turn.
Happen. That's right.
It takes one thing, and no one's coming to save us.
No.
Like I said, I mean, people can look at it however they want. Thankfully, there's still good people in the world that did go save those people and did do their very best. But at the end of the day, those counties, those small little communities, they didn't have.
And we can cut the budget to make up deficits. It's easy. It's not hard. You can do it, but there's an impact. At the county government level, there's an immediate impact to cuts. The states make.
What would that look like?
It depends on how big the cut is. It could be, we reduce funding to schools, so now you lose your teachers, or you lose the programs in the school that help those kids, either kids that are struggling or those kids that are gifted and talented.
Right.
You take away the opportunity to see how far they can go, or those kids that are struggling, you lose that opportunity to help them, get them up.
Right.
So you close parks, you don't pay your police officers, so you lose police officers. I mean, those are the impacts, but it's easy to cut.
So what is it safe to say that without at least, and this is just my opinion, without at least looking into something to supplement what we have now. Now, I'm not saying it has to be a data center. I think there's a lot of boxes that we all have to check.
But we've been looking. There are things. There are businesses that have been to Calvert County, looked at us, and chose not to come, that people don't know anything about.
And why is that? Why don't they choose Calvert, and why would we want them to choose Calvert too? Right? Everybody's saying keep Calvert. I keep hearing this over and over.
But you have to have revenues, and you're trying to create jobs so people don't have to drive out of the county to work every day. So
a majority of the county does commute.
We had one company, 800 jobs, was looking at Calvert County. We lost them because another county in Maryland could give them a better incentive to come than we could, so they went there. And we've had companies come trying to do different things in the industrial park that just didn't quite mesh, but some of them were good paying jobs, creating 100 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But they came and investigated and it didn't work out. That's why we say that these data centers aren't a done deal.
Nothing's ever done.
No, until,
again, there's no plan submitted as of right here. We're sitting on
and even once they submit, it doesn't mean it's going to get approved.
Right. And so like the planning commission has been talking about this too. And I was watching the meeting and a lot of those guys have concerns about environmental impacts.
Yeah.
The noise, these low level sound waves that travel through walls and everything else
that you can't hear.
What is this, humming, and my perspective might have been a little different than a lot of other people, but and I'm not speaking for everybody in Calvert County. Like a lot of people that go to those microphones and stand up there and say, you need to listen to all of us. We don't want this. And it's like, who are you? I didn't give you the right to do that. Right. So I'm not speaking for everybody, but what I will say is,
and the most big issues,
the
opponents are always much louder than the proponents.
So I agree with that because a lot of people don't want to listen to the feedback. I'm just dumb enough to want to go talk, and I want to get feedback from both sides and kind of find that middle ground. So when I do talk to somebody, no, okay, well, why? Tell me why. What is your concerns? And what I've found through that is a lot of people didn't know about the water. They thought, oh, they're taking the water. They're gonna, somebody told me they were gonna reroute the river. And I was like, I don't know, and bless them, right? I don't know where they got that information from, right?
Right.
But I was able to still have that conversation with them, and that's why I want to do these conversations. If we can mitigate the risk, and I'm not saying we can, like you said, we don't know until we get a plan. If it's not a fit for Calvert, are you comfortable saying no?
No.
I mean, because there's just a lot of people that are like, oh, it's a done deal. Buddy sold us out. You got the Fisher campaign out here throwing your name. So, we're going to start wrapping this up, right? We've been here a while. I know you got to get back on the tractor and
plant some more corn.
Plant some corn. But I do appreciate you doing this. And just kind of to wrap up, right? Let's touch on some of the backlash that I've seen about you specifically, with the whole Fisher thing. How did that start and where?
I have no idea.
So
up until about a year ago, we were fine. And then all of a sudden he quits talking to me and he's out trying to get camp people to run against me.
Right.
Running ads against me because I said I signed an NDA. Well, yeah, I signed the NDA, but the whole board approved it. I didn't just sign it.
Okay. So I want to touch on that. Okay. Like I said, the whole reason for this, there's a lot of misinformation, and I think a lot of people don't pay no mind to that, right? But for the mass majority of Calvert County, they're gonna see us and listen to this, and it does help to clear some of that up. If somebody's on the fence and doesn't really know where to go from here, like, what is an NDA? To my understanding, an NDA, it happens all the time. It's probably happening right now as we speak with another county, with the state, with the U.S. government.
In Calvert County.
What, from your perspective, there's a snippet and it says, when you were the president of the commissioners, right? You had signed your name on an NDA, and there's, I saw a snippet and it's going around Facebook.
On behalf of the board.
So you did that on behalf of the board, which means, someone might have a way of saying.
All five agreed.
So is there any way for you to sign that without all five on board?
No.
So, okay. So if you're guilty for signing it,
they all are.
The other five are. Yeah. So what was that NDA? Who was it signed with? We're seeing a lot of this, there's Buddy made a deal with Amazon where he sold our county.
We haven't made a deal with anybody.
So
the NDA, we never signed an NDA with Amazon.
Okay.
Have no NDA, never did.
I heard that in the meeting, but I just want to get that out there.
Never had an NDA with Amazon.
Okay.
Had an NDA with Nutelli and his partner Rowan.
Okay.
And that was more for them about getting a potential client and the power.
Okay.
Because if you can't get power, so they were concerned about being too public and other people flocking in to try to get the power. So they were trying to operate, kind of under the radar to get there, because power is really hard to get, and that it's first come first serve. So you're in line to get power.
Right.
You want to be as close to the top of the list as you can be.
Right.
So I think they were concerned. I don't want to speak for them, but I think they were concerned about others jumping in.
Well, nationwide.
Yeah.
Nationwide, data centers are popping up everywhere.
So that's all the NDA was. People say, well, you made a deal. We haven't made a deal with anybody. We haven't promised anybody anything. In fact, we have said publicly, we are not making deals with any of them. They're going to pay full rate of taxes. They're going to pay any costs that are incurred because of them.
I would expect that.
And they are willing to do that. They're different than a lot of other businesses. A lot of other businesses, when they come knocking, they want an incentive, or they want you to help them do something. At least so far in our dealings, neither of these people we talked to have asked for any credit or discounts for anything.
Right.
They just want to come.
Okay. And so with the NDA, right, a lot of people, they didn't have an understanding of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
To my understanding, it's an agreement.
Mm-hmm. Non-disclosure agreement.
Most of the time, it's with government agencies. A lot of times.
Most of our NDAs that we have currently are with IT for security reasons.
Right.
Our director of IT would tell you, I'm not doing business with a company that doesn't make me sign an NDA, because then they don't care about their security. But
they don't care about our data at that point.
Exactly,
yeah. I get that.
We even have an NDA over some playground equipment somewhere that we can't allow anybody else to come and work on or fix or something. It's really strange. But NDAs are used for a lot of different things. Usually in economic development, it's because someone has proprietary information that they don't want to have to put out in public. Or for us, we really don't want the whole world to know that we've got some business coming to Calvert County that might generate 200 jobs, because if that word gets out, St. Mary's and Charles are going to start knocking on their door and say, hey, come look at us. So for us, it works both ways.
Right.
We're trying to attract business here. We don't want to have to compete with everybody else to get them.
So is it safe to say that, just for the people watching or that are going to watch, what an NDA to me says is, like, it's not a level of secrecy like you're just talking behind closed doors and making handshake deals with people. It's a way for that business to prospect their project, what they have in mind, without their competitors knowing. And like you said, from our perspective, I mean, at the end of the day, you guys represent us, right? We vote you in. From your perspective, it's more so to protect the county as well from St. Mary's getting that revenue or something like that, if that's what it in turn turned into. But there's no deals, there's no plans, there's no nothing.
And at the end of the day, we don't need an NDA, because we meet in exec session, which is closed to the public anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what the company might want to do, if it fits under the parameters of the exec session, they're going to meet in exec session anyway.
So there's a video that was circulated as well, right? In 23, I think it was 2023 or 2024.
Which one?
Well, yeah, I'm getting there. The video in which I think it was you and Mike talking to somebody representing a data center.
That was
I think it was or not. It was a state. The state came to you guys as Calvert County, and they gave a presentation about data centers. Is that ringing a bell?
No. The only one the one I've seen running is when Fisher was at our legislative meeting. The only other ones we've had is Amazon was at our meeting.
That was recently.
Yeah,
though.
that was like 2 years ago. I can't right.
It was something around the time that the NDA was signed.
Okay.
Someone comment about it, but basically, from my research, it was there was talks in 2023 of data centers. Not necessarily coming to Calvert, but just in general, you guys were made aware that data centers are a new thing. Or 2024.
Yeah, Constellation.
So that's the one it was Constellation. Yeah. Okay, so when they came and gave a presentation about data centers, is that is that part of the reason for the NDAs at that point in time, or is that because you guys never signed one with Amazon?
No, we didn't have one with Constellation either.
Okay, so
that was just
they were just feeling it out.
Constellation, yes, was just kind of notifying us they had been looking for a client. They wanted to do a data center,
and they talked about the revenue.
In that first meeting, they hadn't signed with Amazon yet, and they just talked about
looking
property. You know, we have this property. We
putting
think
it up for
works.
sale, basically.
Well, they're going to lease it. They're not going to sell it.
Well,
and,
you know what I mean.
We have power.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have power. So
Yeah.
it makes a good fit. That was kind of the first conversation. Just wanted to know if we were okay with it. We said, well, we think we are. And at that time, we started working on zoning. People said, well, you know, you included data centers. Well, at that time,
that was my next question. Is that the same time that these
triggered,
zoning?
Yes, that triggered.
Everyone's like, they changed the zoning 2 years ago. Why? They knew it was coming.
So Constellation asked, we have this property. We'd like to change some of the zoning because we may want to put a data center in. Well, then that made us look at our zoning. Nowhere in there did we mention data centers, which kind of left us open.
And
I
think
kind of put one anywhere.
Well, I think I heard at the planning commission meeting, forget who brung it up. I don't want to throw anybody wrong under the bus here, or throw them under the bus, period. But someone did mention that had those zoning changes not taken place when Constellation told you guys that they were looking at maybe doing a data center.
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, everybody's going to say, well, why didn't you scream that to the public? Well, because it's literally a talk. You know, I'm sure you guys.
And at that time,
people come and talk about apartment complexes. They talk about businesses and industrial parks that never happened.
Right. Coincidentally, we were doing the zoning ordinance update. So we did the comprehensive plan update. And immediately following that, once you update your comprehensive plan, you do zoning update based on what you did in the comprehensive plan update. So we were working through the zoning ordinance update. So they came to us and said, hey, we'd like to rezone this property. A couple months later, you know, we started getting some interest in offsite A. So going through the zoning ordinance update, we included upzoning the industrial land at the Constellation site and for offsite A, just in case.
And that was I-2 and I-1 at that time.
Yes.
And now you guys have proposed taking I-1 out of that and only heavy industrial, which would leave 3 locations for data centers in Calvert.
Correct.
The 2 that are being proposed, and I believe the other one
LNG.
is Cove Point.
Yes.
Okay, so
which doesn't have any footprint left to build anything. So
they're not going to be able to put a campus there anyway.
They have to tear something down.
Yeah.
So, but that zoning, all that took, and even that year, because that was going on, we even put a notice in everybody's tax bill. Hey, the zoning ordinance update that's taking place, you should go on the website, look at the changes, because there were a lot of changes. You should go in there, look at the list of changes, see if anything, you know, might interest you.
Right.
A lot of people didn't pay attention to that.
I know I didn't.
The Camp Corner neighbors said, hey, we never got any notice. Well, you did in your tax bill. Well, we didn't pay attention to that. Well, we sent you and sent everybody a notice that, hey, we're going through zoning ordinance update.
At the end of the day, no one knew how it was going to blow up to this. I genuinely feel that way. Whether you were on the board, whether you were, if you're a candidate right now, if you know, if you're general public like me in 2024, I wasn't paying attention to that. Everything was hunky-dory great. And I knew that we had some money issues because of the state, you know,
pushing down costs on
pushing down everything. But other than that, no, it wasn't blown into what it is now.
And we didn't know if anything was going to come. You know, somebody knocks on your door one day. We still don't.
To my understanding, we still don't.
So, you know, somebody knocked on our door 3 years ago. We're going through the zoning ordinance update. Here's our opportunity to make corrections, to narrow down where they can go and at least put in some language that allows for them.
So data centers aside here, NDAs, and we're wrapping this up because I know you got stuff to do, man. And I appreciate you doing this. I do. NDAs, I've heard a lot of people say, well, why do we need them? We don't need them.
Oh, we need them.
So we did talk about kind of the reasons why, right? Now, like I said, I might play devil's advocate here, but if I'm doing, you know, from my perspective, if I live on Camp Kenoi, right? Maybe I would have wanted to know that in 2024 that someone's prospecting that. And I completely kind of understand where they're coming from.
Oh, yeah.
Moving forward, is there any way that you can promise, or anybody can promise, that no NDAs like that will be signed? And you know, why not? Because people are wondering that, and I don't really have an answer for them, you know, because you research this stuff and it seems like it's an agreement between, you know, either a government entity or a real big private landowner and another business, and it's so competitors can't get it, right? But for a county government, our competitor is other counties
Right.
is the state, or what is our other competitor? It is Charles County, right? It is St. Mary's.
But we have, I mean, like we talked about earlier, we have NDAs for other things, so you can't just blanket say no NDAs.
Well, specifically, let's say specifically large scale projects. Is there a way that we can say, okay,
we didn't have
look,
one with Amazon,
so right with them, right?
and here we are.
And here we are.
So
I know you didn't have one with them. They posted the job. They're the ones that started the whole fire
I'm
here.
just saying that,
Yes.
you know, people are pointing a lot of fingers at NDAs.
They think NDAs are a secretive thing, okay? And I don't know how to really tell them that it's not, because
It is. It is.
it is a secretive
It is.
agreement,
It
but
is.
it's not to make backdoor deals. Nothing is signed.
We didn't make any backdoor deals.
So as a citizen, NDA or not, you can't put into place as a commissioner. To my understanding, you cannot put it in place during an NDA without the public knowing. You can't just say, "Yeah, we agree to terms," and until they have fun.
Yeah, no, we can't. They still got to go through
the NDA has to expire.
They've still got to go through the planning and zoning process.
Okay. Well, I would hope so. Everyone else does. If
Yeah.
you build a deck in this county, you got to go through that.
Yeah,
so
we're all still waiting for
Right.
somebody to apply, and that'll trigger a public process.
And
to
the
vet out all these issues.
MDE submission, that's normal, right?
Yeah.
That has to happen
Right.
From my understanding, everything has to go to the state
Right.
first, get
Right.
approved before it
Right.
can come to the county.
Right.
It
Right.
works top to bottom, right? Just like anything else. If
And
I get a sewer put
Right.
in my backyard replaced, I have to get it approved by the MDE up in Annapolis before I could have the county come tell me, yeah, I can
Right.
build the sewer there.
And they're just laying groundwork, just like the job posting. You know,
Right.
they said that didn't mean we were going to hire somebody. We're just prospecting to see who's out there.
I wanted to see how much pushback.
Because if the project
Right,
does move,
right.
we got to have people ready to come to do the project. You know,
Right.
It's not like I get my permit today and just go hire them tomorrow. We've got to know.
No, they have to vet people and stuff. Yeah.
So they're doing all that before they get to us, while they're working for that project, while they're working with Constellation to figure out. Because as I tell people now, when Amazon AWS first looked at that property, they saw 2,000 acres. They said, "Man, this is great." But then when they came to Calvert County, they figured out that they've got postage stamps in that 2,000 acres where they can actually put a building. So they
and that's
can't
the
do-
wetlands. That's the protected
Yes.
forest. That's the
all those buffers for
Mhm.
endangered species, eagles,
Mhm.
all that stuff. They had no idea, but they're doing their groundwork, which they're trying to do before the whole world gets fired up
Yeah.
to see if it'll actually work. So we come in today and we say, we're going to do a data center in Constellation.
Yep.
People get all fired up. Well, then when they go look, maybe they can't even do it.
Well,
so they got everybody all fired up.
We did get fired up now. You know, but
which is fine.
I think
It's
it
the
is
public
rightful.
process.
I think
Yeah.
it's rightful
Yes.
for some of the backlash.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can get it out to the public any sooner for anything in the future? What would your process look like in the future? Do you have any regrets how anything was handled? And I only ask that because, look, at the end of the day, you know, one commissioner has gone back and said, you know, if I could go back, I think it was the process in which we handled it. He did a very similar sit down just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he said. You know, I did watch that interview, and I hope people watch this one, but he did say he had some regret.
Even without an NDA, we wanted to be much more open than Amazon would allow.
Okay, so...
And that's just their process.
So if you came out from Jump Street, you know, let's say, you know, general timeline, let's say 6 months ago, you guys came out and said, hey, Amazon's looking at building next to the nuke plant a data center. Does Amazon then just run away? See you later?
Maybe.
From your understanding, right?
If all this fire comes right out of the gate, maybe. That's a deciding factor. So, and I do want to add in that when Amazon AWS had that public meeting in Prince Frederick, they've never done that before.
I couldn't find another one.
They never do that until after they submit an application for a site plan.
Yes, they did that prior to.
So when people complain about we didn't get specific answers, that's because they didn't have a site plan to talk from, and they were talking in general because they didn't have a site plan to work from.
And you know,
but we asked them to do that, and they did that for us.
why'd you ask them? Because of the
Because
outrage?
yes,
Okay.
trying to get more
Yes.
information on the street. Trying to get, and people went there, and I think people did get answers. Some people got flustered because they couldn't get answers to specific questions because they didn't have a specific site plan to talk from.
Well, I can't tell you how much, like you said, you can't, when it comes to data centers, and again, this is just my independent research, you can't tell me how much noise they make unless I know what they're actually doing inside. Like you said, Bitcoin and those sorts of things, there's a few similar to that are also loud. We don't know.
Yeah.
Now, if they say, hey, we want to build a 8, or I think it was 7 or 8 for Amazon. Hey, we want to build this campus over here and do Bitcoin. What would your answer be to that?
That's a different process and a different mitigation. Then you look at your setbacks, you get into the details of, okay, where are you going to put the buildings? How loud are they? How far does that sound travel? That's why I oppose the moratorium. Until we have a site plan, you can't get into that detail to know
right
what.
And with a moratorium, they don't even have the opportunity.
Don't have an opportunity. Because Commissioner Hart that day, I'm not throwing Commissioner Hart on the bus, but Commissioner Hart said, well, then they apply to us, and then we work through it in the moratorium.
That's not how it works.
And I said that's a very complicated process that I've never seen.
Yeah.
So
I'm not in the government. Yeah. I even know that you can't do that. I can't just come to you or the president, Commissioner Ireland. I can't just be like, here's my site plan. I'm building a house tomorrow.
That's why we have a
doesn't work like that.
Process. It's a public process.
Yes.
They will work through all those issues, and we'll be a part of that more so than any other. I can guarantee you that as soon as somebody submits an application, we're going to require an EIS study of that project, because now we have something to study.
Okay, and what does that consist of? Just
it's an environmental impact study. So you lay out the scope. What are you looking at? You're looking at sound. You're looking at lighting. You're looking at impact to wildlife. You look at all that impact.
Can we do that independently? Would be my question.
So the concern is yes, but if we hire, does that mean it's independent? Who does it? That's the question when you start delving into independent.
No one can answer that either.
So we could, my position right now is we hire somebody that's not county government, that's not
state
data
government
center related. Yes, that's
I don't want state. I don't want any government.
We hire.
Don't want them attached to. Let's just say it's Amazon for.
Yeah.
I don't want them attached to it.
Yes. But and then we can take, if Amazon has already done one, we can take that and give that to an independent to review to see if they find flaws in it. But that's a partnership too. Constellation's got to agree to allow us to have somebody that doesn't work for them on their property.
Right, because it is private property at the end of the day.
And it's federally regulated because of FERC and the nuclear power plant,
which adds a whole different layer.
People are concerned about what they're going to do on Constellation's site. People have to remember, Constellation's not going to put in jeopardy their license to operate that plant to allow somebody else to come in and do something that doesn't fit all.
And that's a federal license.
Yes.
And we all know there's deer hunters out there that push the limit.
Yes.
Show me a goose hunter that's willing to push it, because that's a federally protected bird.
Yeah.
So there is that level.
That's right.
There is that level.
There's an extra level that people haven't grasped.
And so when it comes to like the stream and the impact and all that, at a certain point, I do think the state's going to require something. Yes. The federal government might even require something because of that licensing.
Yeah. And they're working through MDE, and what we have learned is they're going to put in bridges, because bridges are less invasive than pipes to the streams. And we talked earlier about asking them to collect their roof runoff to reduce the stormwater issue.
Yes.
But MDE said, wait a minute, if you collect all that roof runoff, then the streams dry up because they don't have water anymore. So MDE wants some water to flow.
But see, that's where I disagree with them, right?
Well,
because right now it's all woods, those streams are full. So if I add a big roof
and you collect that
8 times and then collect it, now I have cooling water. That I've talked to 602 guys that have been at these meetings, and they'll probably recognize me if they ever watch this. But I brought that up as a prospect, and they seem to like it, but they've never done it on a data center. But it has been done.
Amazon says they've done it.
Okay, see, I haven't found that project, but I know it's been done on industrial and commercial buildings before.
And maybe it wasn't a data center, but Amazon has done that somewhere.
And it doesn't have to be all of it, right? But like that, to me, that's a common sense solution. I think that's what we need to find more
Reduces some of that risk of all this runoff.
Yeah, because people want to know, you know, they don't want to ruin streams. Me neither. Like I fish and hunt too. Like
I don't want to ruin this.
They directly affect me as well. So I get that. You know, and then the sound, like you said, we kind of got into that. But you know, to wrap this up, you know, what else do you have that you want to say, and you know, tell the people, you know?
So at the end of the day, you know, there's nothing I would do to harm this county.
I you know, I hope you're in that position for that reason, and I hope that for all five.
Yeah,
I truly
didn't get in this for money.
Yeah,
I'm not doing this for money now. You know, we need revenue, but not at the risk.
Right.
And you know, we talked before. I've been to Ashburn.
Yep.
If it's
We're not
bad,
Ashburn.
If it's as bad as these people say, Ashburn would be desolate. And I'm not minimizing the impact. I'm just saying that, you know, if you go to Ashburn and visit Ashburn, it will enlighten you a little bit, because there are schools literally right beside data centers, and they've been there for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, and you know, much like anything new, we're not going to know the long term.
Nope.
There's no way for us to determine that. We can guess. We can guess. You know,
I just ask people to have an open mind.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
And just pay attention to the process and listen to the process, and
do their own research
and see where this plays out.
I would say too, just to add to that, do your own research. Don't let somebody else. Don't let this one video tell you how to vote or tell you how to feel about data centers. Do your own research. You know, if there's so much outrage and people care, I think that's a good thing, because people are coming together. But use that for good as well.
And there, whatever decision we make, I told my children when they were growing up, every decision you make, there's an impact.
Yes.
One way or the other.
Yes.
And there's going to be an impact with this. If we do it, there's an impact of revenue and to the people that live close by.
As well.
There's good and bad impacts. If we don't do it, there's only a bad impact. That long-term revenue is going to be an issue, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on budget if we can't find revenue from other places, because you just can't keep cutting and not impact the quality of life that we have.
Not without raising taxes, not without losing amenities. I've never seen it work anywhere else.
Right.
So, you know, that's just my 2 thoughts on it. You
just
know,
vote in June.
Yeah, everybody go out and vote, man. And hey,
it
was awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the interview.